Hey everybody, and welcome back to another Max Velocity weather forecast. And in today's forecast, we'll be breaking down another severe weather outbreak that'll be impacting the United States this upcoming week. This is no April Fool's joke because we'll be watching for a similar setup that'll bring multiple tornadoes and significant damaging winds from the Midwest back through the southern plains. I'll give you the latest breakdown on everything that you need to know in this forecast, but let's first begin with what's happening across the United States today that will lead into that threat for severe weather next week, beginning with the Midwest. That is actually where that low pressure system is located this afternoon. This is what just brought that massive severe weather outbreak, brought multiple tornadoes. There was at least 60 tornado reports from yesterday, so we've at least had a few dozen tornadoes that impacted the United States yesterday. This system is finally moving off to the east, but before it goes away from the United States, there will be a threat for severe weather in the northeast and along the east coast this afternoon for damaging winds and maybe an isolated tornado threat. And you can see all that convection right now along the mid-Atlantic region. A lot of thunderstorm activity still out there. That is going to be pushing off to the east over the next few hours. Back over into the central United States, we are beginning to get high pressure dominating the region, so we're going to have nice conditions overall for the second half of the weekend for most of the United States. Not a whole lot of rain is expected here for the United States. Now, in terms of what to expect over the next several days, that low pressure system will race off to the north and east tonight. We'll be drying out for Sunday, but eventually going into next week, that is when concerns begin to grow again for a severe weather outbreak. Look at this on Tuesday afternoon. A strong low pressure system, even stronger by the way than the one we just had, will develop over the central and northern plains. One thing to note is that there could be a pretty large winter storm as well out of this, so we're watching for a dual threat of not just snow, but as well as the threat for a severe weather outbreak. Eventually going into late Tuesday, severe storms likely to start to fire up on the eastern side of this low pressure system. That threat will extend from the southern plains all the way back through the Midwest and the Mississippi Valley. Once we go into the overnight Tuesday into Wednesday, look at this. A line of storms will develop here across the Midwest and back through the southern plains. This is where widespread, or at least numerous to widespread damaging winds, as well as some large hail and a few tornadoes will be possible across another large area on Tuesday into Wednesday. Eventually, as we go into Wednesday into Thursday, that system moves a bit further off to the east, where the severe weather threat will start to dwindle on Thursday. So the Storm Prediction Center has already issued an enhanced risk of severe weather. This does include areas even near Chicago, back through southern Iowa, and into northern Arkansas. This is not a whole lot of different from what we just saw yesterday with the day 4 or 5 outlook. The area wasn't too far off from this, so we're looking at the same area, seeing another severe weather outbreak as we go into Tuesday. In addition to that, the slight risk of severe weather goes through northeast Texas, again, very similar to what we just saw yesterday, and it goes into southern Wisconsin and southwest Michigan. Again, not that different from what we just saw yesterday. The risk is almost identical to what we just saw yesterday, but obviously the moderate and high risks have not been issued at this point. And I don't think we'll get to a high risk at this point, but again, we're still several days out, so things could change as we get closer. Now, a big reason why we're going to see another severe weather outbreak just like this is the jet stream. And honestly, look at this. This is insane. So look at the low pressure system going into Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. This is the low pressure system, and this is a negatively tilted trough, and this is one of the most negatively tilted troughs I've seen in quite a while. This is going to create a very strong southwesterly flow, which will create a lot of spin in the atmosphere, which could lead to another tornado outbreak that we might see here across the Midwest and through the southern plains. So really concerning feature there. In addition to that, the low-level jet will be cranking on Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. Low-level jet will get upwards of 60 to 80 knots across this region. Again, here's your low pressure system, and we're going to have very strong winds, another southwesterly flow, which again helps to create an increased tornado risk across this region. And what the low-level jet is the lower level winds, which can help to rotate supercells. And that's what we're looking at here with those higher values that can lead to an increased tornado threat. In addition to that, the dew points and all the moisture will be surging again up to the north. Very, very similar to what we just saw yesterday with how far north the dew points went. Look at this. It goes right into the same area, literally. Low pressure system centered currently, or at least forecasted to be right around where it was just yesterday, and the dew points will rise right into a very similar area with the dry line extending down to the south. And if anything, it's actually a little bit more humid than what it was yesterday, so that might create a little bit more buoyancy, which could lead to, again, another severe weather outbreak. So really concerning, honestly, when we're looking at this entire system. As well as the instability. The instability is basically like gasoline into a vehicle. It's what helps to fuel severe thunderstorms. And look at this, the instability values, again, even higher than what we saw yesterday. So we can almost compare apples to apples here with the two events, and this one looks to be a bit more concerning, to be honest with you, than what we just saw yesterday. Now, keep in mind, things can change over the next few days. We are still several days out, so keep that in the back of your head, but this is definitely something that you're going to want to monitor over the next few days. If you have any outdoor plans Tuesday night, definitely make sure that you're taking the proper precautions and have a backup plan just in case. So for the timing, obviously we're still several days out, but I'm going to give you a general idea of when you can expect storms. Beginning with the Midwest, currently the low pressure system is at least forecasted to be centered somewhere near Nebraska or Iowa going into Tuesday afternoon. So this is just after lunchtime. A few severe storms could begin to fire up as we go into Tuesday afternoon, and by the evening hours, we'll be watching for more of a line of storms to develop. So slightly different from what we saw this past time. This looks to be a bit more of a squall line sort of threat, which would mean that we'd be watching for a line of storms with damaging wind potential and embedded tornadoes. In addition to that, we're not looking at a whole lot of discrete supercells. Maybe a couple, though, during the afternoon, what I just showed you just a moment ago. Now, once we go into late Tuesday night and a Wednesday morning, that line of storms moves off to the east, potentially producing some numerous damaging winds and across areas like Chicago, Milwaukee, and eventually crossing over the Great Lakes. And eventually going into Wednesday, that all clears out. Maybe a little bit of snow if you're back up in the northern Midwest, but not too concerning there. For those back through the Mississippi Valley and as well as the Ohio Valley, we'll be watching for storm activity to potentially fire up again Tuesday afternoon. If this storm activity does indeed fire up, those are going to be the threat for discrete supercells, which may have an increased tornado threat. Once we go through Tuesday night and a Wednesday morning, that is when that line of storms develops from southern Iowa all the way back through the southern plains, and eventually going in through Wednesday, that is when that line of storms will move off to the east. So again, damaging wind potential is a bit more concerning out of this. I do not foresee as high of a tornado risk with what we just saw yesterday, but it is not impossible to see a few tornadoes, which again, one or two may be strong, not out of the question. For those in the southern plains, there's actually a risk for severe weather tomorrow and as well as today. The threat is pretty low. It's just damaging winds and maybe some isolated large hail. But once we go into upcoming Tuesday night, that's when we could see that line of storms. It probably will not impact Texas or Oklahoma a whole lot unless this low pressure system slows down. So for right now, I'm not overly concerned about severe weather in Oklahoma or Texas out of this event, but keep a close eye on the forecast over the next few days because again, things can change as we get closer. The last thing that I want to mention will be the wind gusts behind this low pressure system, because as I mentioned before, this will be a very intense low pressure system, even stronger than what we just saw yesterday. Notice these wind gusts back through areas in the Midwest and the northern plains. Wind gusts could get upwards of 60 to 70 miles per hour. That could definitely send some trampolines flying. We'll have to watch this area very closely over the next several days, so make sure that you're subscribed down below and click the bell icon so you get notified with the latest forecasts. This forecast is brought to you by Platinum Contracting.